My next guest is one of the most talked about people of the moment. Rolling Stone magazine just called her pop culture's most valuable critic. Others have called her a feminist, bravely confronting sexism in our culture. For 2 months now, Anita Sarkeesian's name has been splashed across the headlines as a central figure in what's been described as a war on women in the video game industry, something the media has come to refer to as Gamergate. Sarkeesian and other women who work and write about the industry say they've been threatened, intimidated, and terrified by a seemingly endless wave of anonymous threats from what they suspect are extremist members of a male-dominated gamer community. The story exploded back in August when the ex-boyfriend of an indie game developer posted a scathing online attack against the woman. Among the damaging accusations, that she had slept with a reporter to get a favorable review on one of her games. The allegations of corruption caught the attention of the media, triggering an angry wave of tweets and emails targeting both the press and women in the gaming industry. But Anita Sarkeesian says for her the threats started 2 years earlier. That's when the social critic began exploring the sexist depictions of women in video games on her YouTube program, Feminist Frequency.
Plot devices that capitalize on female trauma for shock value function in much the same way as the hitting a child or kicking the dog tropes do.
No one defies Thag the Impatient.
There, you happy now?
Since going public with her criticism of the industry, Sarkeesian says angry gamers have smeared her reputation, violated her personal life, and most alarmingly, threatened her safety. Back in September, she received a bomb threat while at an awards banquet in San Francisco. Then just days ago, she canceled a speaking engagement at Utah State University after the school received an anonymous threat from an alleged gunman who promised to shoot students if she spoke. The FBI is now reportedly involved in Sarkeesian's case, and in the meantime, more women are coming forward with similar stories of harassment and threats.
It's literally been the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. They have targeted my financial assets of my company. They have set up fake accounts to impersonate me online with me saying just horrible, horribly discriminating things against people in an effort to destroy my professional reputation. They've actually set up burner accounts with fake, stories about my life and have sent them to prominent journalists.
Video game designer Brianna Wu says the repeated threats forced her and her husband to go into hiding for their own safety. Meantime, Anita Sarkeesian says something has to be done to change the culture of the video game industry, and she intends to be part of the solution. She joins me now live from San Francisco. Anita, good morning.
Good morning.
So this is appalling and also maybe difficult for folks who aren't part of the gaming industry to completely understand. So help us to understand. I mean, we watched your Feminist Frequency, and you're very sort of measured. You're clear that you love parts of the game, that you're part of it, but also that you have a critique. How in the world does that end up with death threats and bomb scares?
It is really hard for people outside of the industry to understand this, and I think even for a lot of people in the industry to understand that this is what it's come to. One of the reasons why I think this is happening is in the last few years there's been a very strong push towards making gaming a more inclusive space, making games more inclusive, making the industry more inclusive, and there's more and more voices speaking up to demand this change. And I think that there is a section of mostly male gamers who are fighting against that, who are trying to preserve the status quo of gaming as a male-dominated space. And their reaction is often in these ways that you were just describing, violent, threats of violence, attacking our character, trying to discredit us, threats to, misogynist and sexist slurs, all of those sorts of things.
So help me to understand the decision to cancel the talk. I really want people to understand just the extent of this threat. I get rape threats online. We see the kind of horrible things that women get. But for the most part, you can sort of say, well, this is horrifying, but it's social media, and then you move forward. But you made a decision to cancel this talk because you took these threats very seriously. Why in this case?
I do, and I take all the threats that I receive very seriously. seriously. This was the first time I canceled an event due to threats, and part of the reason, or actually the reason why I canceled was when I spoke to the police that was responsible for increasing security at the event, I asked them about Utah's concealed gun laws and if they could screen for weapons. Now, to be clear, the threat that was received was about a massive school, like a massacre, right? A school shooting. So I asked them what they were going to do to screen for weapons and firearms, and they said that they couldn't do anything. I requested pat-downs or metal detectors, and they said no. So they wouldn't even check for permits to see if people, you know, were permitted to have firearms on them. And I think that this is ludicrous to put me and the students' safety at risk when there's literally a threat about a school shooting with firearms.
I want to back up for 1 second, because on the one hand there's kind of the horror of the violence and the threats. But I also want to go to the content of your actual critiques. And one of the most important to me is your claim, and I'd like you to play this out from our audience a little bit, that sexism and misogyny are simply bad for the imagination, that they're bad for gaming as an industry because they're kind of uninteresting.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that's so interesting and almost sad is that, you know, we will, you know, suspend our disbelief when it comes to dragons and ogres and magic in these games. Often we'll have massive invisible backpacks full of weapons that we can use at our disposal in these games. But somehow the idea that, you know, the exploitation of women, or, you know, a world free of the oppression of women is just deemed too bizarre to be believable.
Yeah. Final question. So many times when bad things do happen, you will hear this kind of low level, the games made me do it. How can you, how do we do a reasonable, smart pop culture critique without just turning into the games made me do it in terms of violence?
Right, right. Yeah, you know, I am definitely not advocating that there's a one-to-one correlation at all, but I do this work because I think that media matters, right? I think that the media helps to shape our attitudes and beliefs and value systems. And so what does it say about, you know, our society when the primary means of conflict resolution in most of these major games are about violence?
Anita Sarkeesian in San Francisco, California. Thank you for continuing to speak up and stay safe.
Thank you.
Up next, Citizen Radio comes to Nerdland. Our friends Allison and Jamie have something new to tell you about.